bottom of Chavtes Samad Beis, towards the bottom, 29b. Come back to the halachas of, specifically here actually Sefer Torah. So, there's the widest set of lines at the bottom, and if you climb on top of that, two lines, you see Amar Rav Yosef. It's the three last words on the line, 3 lines up.
Yeah.
From the line. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Hani Tarti Mili. The following 2 items, one that is going to say presently, and one that's going to come on the next page. Bisfarim, with regard to the laws of writing of Sefer Torah. Tana Tiyufta, and on each of these 2 items there is a refutation from an earlier text. Even though I think the second item will be resolved, as Taisus points out, nevertheless he calls it Tiyufta. Tiyufta, as we've explained in the past, there are different ways the Gemara introduces questions. One of them is Tiyufta, the description, Meisveh is the action of a Tiyufta, and that's the kind of question which is refutation from a source greater than the one who's speaking. Right, there are different types of questions. There are contradictions, there are questions based on logical reasoning, there are questions based just out of curiosity, like an inquiry. And this is, Tiyufta as a refutation. It's a question based on a source superior to the one speaking. So if it's a sage of the Gemara, a quote from a Mishnaic age. If it's a sage from the Mishnah, it'll be a quote from a verse. And likewise. So Rav Yosef says there are 2 statements from Rav that had such refutations. The first goes as follows. Chad, the first is Had Amar Rav, that which Rav said. Sefer Torah, a Sefer Torah, sheyesh bo shtei toyos, that has 2 mistakes, b'chol daf v'daf, on each page. So you have columns in the Torah, of course, it's a few hundred columns probably. So if every column had 2 mistakes, then you're talking, you can correct them. The Torah is still valid, it just has mistakes, and you can correct them. Shalosh, if it has 3 mistakes on each column, Yignois, then it should be buried. It should be interned because it's already an invalid Torah. So once there's like a critical mass of mistakes that Torah reaches, in which it's no longer fixable, and it gets interned. So Rav said that 2 is okay, 3 is the threshold. And if there's 3 mistakes on each line, on each page, each column, then it's to be interned.
Each column throughout the whole Torah?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to define more about that as we go along. Yeah. So we'll see there's a few different versions to this Gemara. We're going to stick to one because it's not exactly clear what the Gemara means in terms of its numbers. But we'll stick to one version just so that it's easy to read throughout the whole thing, but we'll get a better picture as we go along. Tana to Yufta. So that was a statement from Rav. And Rav Yosef began by saying that there's a refutation. So we've learned the refutation to that statement, a text from the Mishnaic age, which reads, Shalosh Yitaken, that if you have 3 mistakes on each page, you can fix it. Arba Yignois, if you have 4, then you intern. So this essentially ends the point that Rav Yosef is making. Rav Yosef is making the point that Rav said one statement in his refutation, and it's rather simple. Rav says 2 is okay, 3 is the threshold, and it must be interned. And the Mishnaic age text says the threshold is 4. So long as you have 3 on each page, you don't have 4, it's still a fixable Torah. But on the subject, the Gemara now elaborates a little bit more so we can get a clear picture of the full halacha. Tana, we've learned, in relation to this issue, that in yesh daf achas shlema, if you have one complete page, if you have one page, at least the way the Gemara seems to understand it at the moment, if you have one page free of mistakes, so every other page, we're sticking with this version of Rashi's, the seeming understanding of Rashi, as opposed to the Shita Mikabetzis or others. If you had a sefer, which is 4 mistakes on each page,
Sorry,
the threshold
are
is...
you using the word
column and page interchangeable?
Yes. I'm sorry. Column and page interchangeable. Correct. Yeah, because the Gemara uses the word daf, and daf means pages. So my brain automatically translates the word daf as page, but it means column. Yes, I'm sorry. I'll try to stick to column. Okay, so the way Rashi understands, the way it seems to be from Rashi, is as follows. If you have a Sefer Torah that has 4 mistakes on each column, but yesh bar daf achas shlema, you have one page that's free of mistakes. At least that's the way the Gemara understands it at the moment. Matzela says kula, it saves the rest of it. In other words, 4 was the threshold, that if you have 4 on each page, it has to be interned. Now, if you had one that was free of mistakes, then that one page tells you that the Torah is still fixable. That one column, tells you that the Torah is still fixable, and you can fix all the other mistakes, even though there's 4 per column. Clear?
But even if there's 6 on one column and none on the other one, it's okay.
That's right. So, okay, let's see in a moment. Let's just stick with the number 4 at the moment, just because it's easier, because we'll see Gemara's going to qualify it in a moment more. I don't know why there's 2 dots here. It seems to be misplaced. I don't know why it's there. It's not a new subject. It's a continuation. At any rate, Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, Rav Yitzchak, son of Shmuel, son of Marta, said, Mishmid Rav and Rav, in qualifying this statement that we just said. Namely, that if you have one page, one column that is wholesome, without free of mistake, that can save the rest of the Torah, even though the rest of the Torah has 4 mistakes per column. Who qualifies? Who dekasav, and that is Ruba the Safra Shaper, that most of the Torah is written okay. Which gets to the point that if there's like multiple mistakes on each page, then it's too much, even if one is free of mistake, because the rest of them have too many mistakes, they can't be fixed. But the Gemara doesn't qualify what too many is. What's too many? What's the number? So the Shita B'Betzah says
one good column doesn't save the
4 doesn't seem to be the threshold, right? Because it said if you had 4, then
right, but 4 is the threshold.
Okay.
Right. So 4 is the threshold if every single one has a mistake. Once there's one that's free of mistake, then the threshold for the rest of it becomes increased.
Right.
But by how much?
By how much?
Yeah, so the Shita B'Betzah writes 8 or 6.
8 or 6?
I don't know why he says that, but 8 or 6. And Rashi is not clear exactly. It's not exactly 100% clear. But then in the second one, it says harbe toyos, many mistakes. I don't know. But this is the statement. So the bottom line is like this. The threshold is 4 per column. Once you have one column that's free of mistake, the threshold increases. To what degree? Let's say it's 8. Let's just say it's 8. I'm sure the halacha has more discussion on this.
8 on every other column?
8 in every other column.
Oh.
Once you reach that, then it's, even though you have one free of mistakes, it's too much already. Okay. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. Abaye asked Rav Yosef. Now, this one page, this one column that's free of mistake, which increases the threshold of mistakes that the rest of the columns can carry. What does it mean that it's free of mistake? Does it mean it's free of mistakes completely, or does it mean it's under the threshold? Namely, if that one page only has 3 mistakes, what's the law? So we said to begin with at the threshold of a column is 4. So if it has 3, you can still fix it, right? So now, which means like this: let's say the rest of the Torah has, let's just say it's 5 mistakes, will be under the lowest threshold of the Shita B'Betzah. So you have 5 mistakes in every single column, and one column has 3. So one column is under the threshold of the original threshold. Is that still considered free of mistakes to be able to allow you to fix the rest of the Torah?
That's a very broad definition of free of mistakes.
That's right. Where it's like when it begins, it seems very tight, and then as we go, we broaden it more and more. Amar lei, so says Rabbi Yosef back to Abaye, litzikuni, because it's been given to correction, mitkan, it can be corrected. That is to say like this. Had the Torah only had these 3 mistakes on this one column, you would have fixed it, right? In other words, we don't consider 3 mistakes as mistakes. So if that's the case, if you have if you have a Torah which has 5 mistakes in every single column, and one column only has 3, so we isolate that one column and say, okay, this one column had it only had 3, I would fix it, because it's not. We don't consider that mistake enough to render it not kosher. So I'll fix those, and now that I fixed it, I have one column free of mistakes, and I redeem the rest of the Torah, increasing its threshold from 4 to 6 or 8 or more even, depending on which threshold we're taking. Following? Which means, in theory, a Torah can have 5, 6 mistakes in every single column. One column has only 3 mistakes, and the entire Torah can be fixed now.
You can go in that order.
I guess, yeah, it doesn't say if you have to fix that one column first. Maybe you have to fix that one column first, and then fix the rest of them. It doesn't say so, but maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, clearly the idea is to try to save the Torah as much as whatever you can.
Yeah, well,
very broad view of saving it.
Yeah. Today, I mean, machines, the technology doesn't really help for the making of Torahs, but to some degree it does. In other words, Torah still has to be written still has to be done by hand, and therefore it's very costly and very time consuming. Right? One person has to dedicate a year or so to writing a Torah, especially if you want to get it nice. As we described earlier, getting all these letters with all the little tagim, with all the little crowns. But to some degree it's become easier because of making the parchments that we can use machines for, at least for a lot of the process. So it becomes a little bit easier. But back then, I mean, it must have been a huge, huge endeavor to make a Torah. And to say you have to intern it could cost the community thousands of dollars, a year of time without a Torah. You know, if you're in a little village somewhere, and there's only one scribe who lives however many miles down the highway by foot or whatever, however you're traveling by wagon in the middle of the winter, and you tell them that they have to intern a Torah, the whole community is stuck without a Torah for who knows how long. So you can imagine that they have to be much more lenient back those days than today. Today, if you found a Torah like this, I mean, I don't know how many people would go through the correction. I mean, look downstairs, we have 6 Torahs that are all functioning, more 7 Torahs. So, anyway. But I think you're right, we're expanding it to make it easier for these kind of communities. That would make sense.
Making of ink much more difficult back then?
The making of ink, there is a special ingredient to the ink.
Creating ink and...
I don't know, like what part of the creation of ink would require machines that would make it easier? Maybe grinding the ingredients, maybe? Could be a little easier because you have machines. There's certain ingredients that go into the making of it. I don't know.
Like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, would it take more effort? Probably. I'm just wondering if there's anything that you do there that could use by a machine. I guess so.
What would they use? A quill? Like a feather?
Yeah, they would use a quill. Yeah.
Today they use something much probably easier than in those days, right?
Today, people use certain kinds of pens.
Right.
But if you want to get a nicer, better quality, to use an Eva, a feather of a geese. That's like the choicest type. But they use a kind of pen that it's not like a ballpoint pen, but it's a kind of pen that drops the ink.
What's that pen with the old style pen? With
Yeah,
the ink?
Fountain pens.
Fountain pens, yeah. They use a fountain pen. That's right, not ballpoint. I meant a fountain pen. Yeah, they use a kind of fountain pen. There are people that use that. But if you're getting a better one, it's going to be done with a quill.
Special nib, that's why.
Nib.
Correct. Yeah, because you have to get those shapes. You have to get those proper shapes. Okay. Yeah.
And it's sturdy.
Yeah. Okay, more qualifications. Now, Bahani Mili, all of the above is only said. That is to say that you can correct these words, you can correct the Torah up to so many mistakes. So you have one column with only 3 mistakes, and the rest of them have even more. You can correct them all up on the highest threshold. That's only, or the lowest threshold. That's only be chaseres. It's only if the problem here is you're missing a word. Then we or letters. Then we say you can't fix it.
You can?
Then we say you can't fix it.
According to our threshold, of course.
You cannot fix it according to the threshold. Meaning if you're missing so many letters, you have to add hundreds of letters to the Torah, Right? You're missing 3 on one page, and you're missing 5 on the other page. You're adding hundreds of letters to the Torah that wasn't there before. You're fixing it. Then we say,
So you can't.
once you meet the threshold, you can't do it anymore.
You can't do it.
3 and 5 would still be within the threshold. Once you hit the point where every single column has 4 or more, then you can't fix it. That is 4 or more missing letters. Following?
Is that because it's becoming a
Every
new Torah?
column.
We'll see in a second.
Every column. There's not that one column.
That's right. So let's say you've passed the threshold, meaning every column has 4 or more.
Okay.
So 4 or more missing letters,
That's the threshold.
and then you reach the threshold, then you can't fix it.
Right.
Avoid you say this, but if the problem here is not that you're missing a letter, but that you have extra ink or an extra letter. So you have 4 or more extra letters in every single column of the Torah. Then, less lanba, no threshold. You can fix it up to as many. Why? Because you can easily scratch them off. You can just scratch off the extra letter.
That's less work than adding.
Well, not just next look, but aesthetically looks better, as we'll see.
Aesthetically.
That's if
Yeah.
it's at the beginning or the end of the word, but if it's in the middle of the words, and you scratch it out, that's a big problem.
Then you have a problem because
then
you.
then you have 2 words.
Yeah.
That
That's-
says you have to extend the letter.
That's right. So over there you have it. So
Okay.
You fix it.
yeah, well, it also depends on what kind of letters. But if you scratched out a letter in the middle of a word, right? So you have an extra space. Now it becomes 2 words. So you'd have to take one of the letters that have a bar on top. Let's say it's a ches, or it's a chaf, which has a bar on top and bottom. Then you can extend that letter to make it one long word. So I think Mar is going to explain. Chaseres my taima loy. What's the reason why, if you are missing letters, you cannot pass the threshold mentioned above? Rav Kana said, Mishum demerzi kimenumar. It looks spotted. It's the same word as nemar, leopard. Same root word as leopard, nemar, which is spotted animal. Why does it look spotted? Because your words are very tight, right? So if you have to add letters into these tight spaces, they'll end up popping up above the line or a little under the line. So you look at the Torah, it doesn't look like straight lines anymore. It's going to have a bunch of little spots all over the place.
Oh, look at this.
A bunch of little speckles.
Wavy. Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah. So that's too much of it. Over there, that's when we have the threshold that each column shouldn't look too spotted. So if you had 3 corrections on a line, on a big column, okay, so you have 3 little spots. But once you have more than that, the whole Torah looks speckled, no good. This is what the Gemara
That's why you
says.
have that threshold. I mean.
That threshold,
the reason.
that's correct. Okay,
So it's about dignity of the Torah. or
That's correct.
aesthetics.
aesthetics, it should look nice.
You, your
Yeah.
eye can tolerate it. Too many, it becomes bothersome to the eye.
Okay, so let's conclude this little section of the Gemara, and then we'll get to the other statement of Rav. Right? Rav Yosef said that there are 2 statements that Rav made with the refutation. This is the first. Let's conclude it, and then we'll get to the next one tomorrow, God willing. Igra, this gentleman named Igra, which we mentioned before, Chamud Rabbi Abba, was the father-in-law of Rabbi Abba, and Rabbi Abba, presumably, he's a sage, maybe even local Rav. So this father-in-law named Igra, Havale Yisedis Besifra, he had, the way Rashi puts it, he had at least four extra letters per line, per column on his Torah. So every column in the Torah he owned, or his shul used, had 4 extra letters. Yisedis, extra letters. So Asla Kamid Rabbi Abba, he went to his son-in-law Rabbi Abba, and asked him, what's the halacha? Amralei, Rabbi Abba told him, Loi Amran, the threshold was only said, the threshold of under 4 on every column is only said Ela b'chaseris. It's only said if you're missing letters, in which case you have to add letters, 4 letters per column, and then it looks spotted. Aval, you say this, but if you have extra letters, and all you need to do is remove them, Leis lan ba, no problem, because Rashi says Ela goyran, you scrape them off, like the letters are, if you have like a fine point blade, you can kind of scratch the letters off. It's not even like erasing them. You can do to the point where you don't even see a mark of the old letter, and therefore less than no problem if you have extras. And in your Torah, you have extra letters per page, scrap them off. As I mentioned before, the Gemara quotes a story as a way of indicating to you that this law remains the actual halacha. Because when a law is stated as a statement, you can have somebody else come along and make another statement, counter statement. But once the law is taken into practice, it's known as Ma'aser Rav, and thus the validity of that halacha remaining true for generations becomes much more edified by the fact that it was actually done in practice. Okay, so this concludes the first thing of Rav with the counter statement and the explanatories and conclusion. And tomorrow, God willing, the other statement of Rav and the discussion around that. And we'll get to some interesting halacha related to that too.